when you think about it, it's not that different from a volley kick in the air isn't that different from a high kick to the face in a game like Sifu. So it did kind of make sense.
Just to get things started, the first thing I wanted to know, as soon as I heard about the game, what led the studio that made Seafood to make a football game?
A number of things. First of all, I think the two games share more similarities than maybe can be felt from the get-go. We've been doing third-person action games, sometimes in online environments, for a long time now because these are the games we were doing when we were working at Ubisoft on franchises such as Ghost Recon. And so I think it really came from the love of third-person action games, of team-based multiplayer games and especially shooters, and of football itself. And when I pitched this idea to my partners while we were actually still working on Sifu, there were some questions because, well, often game developers aren't real fans of football. And and they're more into sci-fi and fantasy and military stuff, and but football not always so much. But it was a project I had in mind for a long time now, and that really came from the idea of having a perspective that's closer to the player, of being one player and being with your friends. And if there was one action that really symbolizes this, it's you being on the pitch, your friend making a long through pass, and you immediately volleying the ball either in a net or towards the other friend. But that action of your friend passes the ball and you volley it is something that didn't exist, that I wanted to see exist. And when you think about it, it's not that different from a volley kick in the air isn't that different from a high kick to the face in a game like Sifu. So it did kind of make sense.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting that you mentioned that game devs don't really like football because I've been playing a lot with friends and none of them like football at all, but they're all obsessed with this game. Was that something that you wanted to do, like appeal to non-football fans? And if so, like how did you achieve that?
I think the objective was to make really solid and deep team-based multiplayer game. And I think if the mechanics, both from a really mechanical standpoint, like inputs, skills, etc., but also from a more tactical standpoint, decisions where you should be placing yourself, where you should be putting the ball when you have it. If there is enough challenge, enough depth within these layers, it doesn't matter that much what's the presentation in a way. I think gamers can go beyond the like very football-y presentation, and I think this is just it's a great team game. It's a great team game, and it's satisfying to use, and it's fun to play with friends. And I feel like every game, I know where I've made my mistakes. I know where I can progress, and you have this path to progression that's very clear. And I think that appeals to a gamer audience beyond people who just like football.
And on that note, I would say as the game is like deceptively simple, where you can pick it up and it's very easy to play, but there's a lot of depth to all of the mechanics. Is that something that you see as sort of like developing a high skill ceiling being key to, I guess, keeping the game popular in the long run?
Yes, I think so, and I think the different mechanics we have, and there's not that many of them, but still quite a few. Um, Most of them have different levels of granularity, which is like the basic functionality is rather immediate and accessible, but then it's a matter of like actually how long are you pressing the input, when are you pressing it, in what situation, and are you applying a curve to the ball, or are you just shooting, without thinking about it? And so most mechanics of the game have these different levels of comprehension, and therefore different levels of depth. And to go beyond this, as we move forward with developing the game, our main focus will be adding even more depth and even more granularity in the different mechanics, whether it's reworking a mechanic like the sliding tackle to allow players to have more control on how they deflect the ball, or other mechanics we could add. A simple example being able to cancel your ball control, and I don't mean cancel your shoot because that's another topic entirely, but just being able to let the ball slide through you because you want it to reach your teammate who's behind you. This is quite a simple mechanic, but that can add quite a bit of depth to the tactical positioning within the team. And so all the improvements that we are going to bring forward in terms of core gameplay are mostly thought of for competitive play for high level players. So I think we have a basic base that is accessible. And what's important is that really for competitive players, that the game, remain deep and interesting for a long time.
And on that note of competitive players, I know that ranked is like a big, I guess, draw for a lot of players.
Yeah.
Do you see the game as having a kind of esports future? Is that something you'd be interested in?
Interested in for sure. Our perspective on esports is that it's up to the players, and our job as developers is to make a game that's engaging, that's deep and challenging, and that warrants playing for a long time, and in which somebody who played for 250 hours is usually better than somebody who played for 50 hours, and so on and so forth. And our responsibility is also to provide tools such as custom games, such as spectator mode within custom games that can accommodate esports or really competitive play tournaments, etc., which we did because we had this from day one. We had private games and spectator mode within them, and we already saw quite a few tournaments getting organized, which was great. And beyond that, we're in contact with a number of organizations, and we do want to support these efforts if players really pick it up and think this is a game that's really worth being played competitively.
Awesome. And I just want to say one thing is that when I first played the game, I first picked it up, my first few matches, I absolutely hated it because I've spent all my life playing FIFA, and shoot was a different button and all of these things are different buttons. So it took a while to get used to, but why are the buttons so different?
It's true that for players who have been playing FIFA EAFC for lots of years, you do need some rewiring because your muscle memory is here. The game at its core is essentially a third-person shooter. It's a third-person action game with aim and shoot mechanics, right? We wanted to leverage that third-person perspective, not only to be close to your character, to have that feeling of connection and that very specific perspective on the action, but also because it does allow you to very precisely aim your shots in a way that a game like EAFC doesn't let you. And in that context, having as main shoot mechanic, a crosshair-based mechanic, so it's your camera that's same, and you move your camera, you decide I'm going to shoot over there, and then apply an effect, have a curved wall, and hopefully hit the net. It was there from the very beginning of the project that was the vision of how you shot the ball. So that's really one of the main differences. Another being that there's no pass button in the game. In a game like EFC, everything is very much automated. You pass the ball to an AI teammate. Your pass is assisted. Your teammate is already getting to the ball as you make the pass before you take control of said teammate. Whereas in a game like ours, it's everything is fully manual, which is very important in terms of feeling it, in terms of challenge, in terms of satisfaction when you land that perfect through ball. It's really because you've aimed it perfectly. Well, the consequence of that is that it does surprise players who are they're used to pressing pass, and pass actually connects. So we what we did see when we brought in during developing pro players in the game, and the players who were the most proficient fast. There were three cohorts: Rocket League players, EAFC players, and Call of Duty players. And by a significant margin, the Call of Duty players were the best at the game really fast because they had these aim and shoot reflexes. They know how to communicate as a team. Plus, most of them actually do enjoy football, and so they understand the basics and the fundamentals of positioning on a field. And so, yeah, I think when you come from a traditional football game, you do have to rewire a certain number of things, but you can rely on your understanding of the game, of the dynamics, of that ebb and flow of a football game, and it should help you to have solid positioning, which is absolutely critical in the game.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've definitely seen that with my friends who, like I said, they don't play football. They're not interested in football, but they do play shooters, which means that inevitably I'm always sort of in defense because I know how to position myself and they have absolutely no idea. But yeah. And again, you mentioned like FIFA and Rocket League, I think, are the games that people have most sort of described it as a combination of, which makes me feel a little bit old because in my mind, it's FIFA Street. And so I wanted to know if at all that has played an influence. Have you guys played much FIFA Street to sort of get that kind of five-a-side skills-based gameplay into your game, I guess?
No, I never played FIFA Street, so the quick answer is no. Was FIFA Street a multiplayer game?
I think it was, and now I'm looking back, I don't know. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah, I think it was
because
multiplayer against each other, not on the same team.
yes, but I think it is a smaller pitch. It is 5v5, but it's the same principle of top down. You control one player at a time, but you switch. You control mostly all players in the team, besides the goalkeeper, which you never control, I think. And for me, it's closer to futsal or street football version of FIFA than to what we're doing because the perspective isn't the same, the mechanics isn't the same, and importantly, you don't have that multiplayer team-based gameplay that is so critical in Rematch because everything relies on your ability to function as a team.
Okay, interesting.
So yeah. So I did look at some videos of FIFA Street, but it wasn't a sort of major inspiration throughout development now.
Okay, interesting. And I've seen that before launch, you got Ronaldinho into the office, was sort of looking at pro players and how they play and like their movement and stuff. How did that impact, I guess, animations and stuff in the game or just making the game in general?
Oh, for sure. We've looked at a lot of videos of pros to inspire the animation team for the moves, to have them both, be both credible and epic, which is, what we're aiming for. And because, one thing we love about football and is that it's such a beautiful sport. Like it's in terms of, bodies in motion, it can be spectacular. Even an action as simple as an oriented control, ball coming to you and you just, smoothly send it in another direction. It's so simple, so efficient, so perfect that it's, very, very beautiful. And so, yeah, we were very much inspired by pro players and their moves. As for the specific case of Ronaldinho, I think beyond his moves, we wanted him as an ambassador because he does incarnate some values around, positivity, sportsmanship, love of the game, wanting to play, a beautiful game that are very, very coherent with the values we're trying to put forward with the game, which is very much around team play, around beautiful, it's jogo bonito, right? It's the beautiful game, and that's and having somebody who's really like very solar, very positive was great. We really enjoyed having him visit the studio. It was a great time.
I'm a little bit jealous, I've got to say. And we've talked a lot about how you've adapted football and how it's not quite a football game. It's a shooter, it's all these things. But I want to know what you would change about real life football if you could.
So it's a big one. I'm not sure I would change much because as it stands, football is such a beautifully designed, elegant, simple game that any significant change could unbalance things. There are initiatives such as what is done at the Kings League that aims to sort of reinvent the rules of football, with different formats, modifiers, etc., which is interesting. Maybe one thing that could be thought for real football is a mechanic that we have in Rematch, which was there in football for a while, which is the golden goal. In Rematch, every time there is an overtime, it's a golden goal rule. And so the first one to score, ends the game there and then. And sure, there were great reasons to remove the golden goal rule and to go for the overtime, the 2 times 15 minutes overtime as it is. But there was something very intense and radical in the golden goal rule, which is, at every given moment, it could, the situation could unlock, the goal is scored, and that's it. Which I think is exciting. And in Rematch, it's, these overtime moments are some of the most exciting and you know nerve wrenching in the game. And one of the pillars of the experience was, there were three pillars: feel like an amazing player, feel part of a team, and feel the pressure. And when you're 6 minutes in your overtime, and it's been going back and forth, and the first mistake will be deadly, that's when you really feel the pressure.
Yeah, I think intense is definitely the right word for it.
For sure.
Yeah, that's all the questions I've got for today. Pierre, thanks so much for talking to us. It's been amazing.
My pleasure. Thanks for your time, Alex.
No problem at all. Happy
Cool.
to do it.